Sean, you turned sideways for a second. Did something happen? No, you just turned.
Yeah, there was an update came through on my phone, and it just kind of.
I got you. All right, welcome everybody to Under the Dome. I'm your host, Allen Ulrich, here with Bob Rose, Sean Williams. We got a full house tonight. How's everybody doing?
As bad as I look.
All right. Well, no Saints news, which I said 2 weeks ago. That's great news.
Yep.
Because no Saints news means that no one's got arrested, no one got injured.
No one was traded.
No one was traded. Nobody slept with their best friend's mom. I'm sorry. Jets news right now is, let's just say it's in some of the most interesting Jets news to come out probably since the days of Joe Namath.
I agree with that.
Your ex-girlfriend writes a story, she gets called, what was it? A bro hopper?
Yeah.
Homie hopper, something to that effect. We used to call that the switch. When a guy would try and he's dating a girl and he thinks her roommate's hotter and tries to switch from the girl you're dating to the roommate.
Yep.
I don't know too many men who pulled that off.
No, I tell you what, though, I had someone in my circle of friends, and if we were younger, he'd love his name dropped. Now he wouldn't so much, so I won't drop the name. But he made it over halfway through this girl and her circle of friends. It was a very, very impressive feat. But unfortunately for him, and unfortunately for me, and another one of his buddies, because we had to go rescue him. He was cornered at their sorority house, and he literally needed rescued. There were eight women there.
That's not good.
No.
Nowadays, women are licensed carry firearms, so.
Yeah.
Well, this girlfriend threw out that Zach Wilson slept with. It's changed. Is it his mom's best friend or his best friend's mom? Because that is a significant difference.
It is.
Yeah. You got Stacy's mom on one side, Jesse's girl on the other.
Rachel Hunter.
I just think it's hilarious because it, of course, appeals to the 14-year-old that's still living in all of us. Like, hell yeah, you pulled it off. His friend's mom. Okay, his best friend's mom. So that's even more interesting. Yeah. Since my son's on, I can't tell these stories. We'll talk about this another time.
That's fair.
And he apparently brought two cheerleaders to prom in high school. It's and at the same time, they talk about cougar hunting and all those other things. It's like, and you get to sleep with teachers. Well, I've been sleeping with a teacher for 26 years now, and it ain't that much. See, my wife's not watching, so I can say this.
Well, we'll find out in a minute, won't we?
Yeah, absolutely. I've told.
If you faceplant on that desk, we'll know she heard.
I told that joke to her before. She gets a big laugh out of it, actually. Whenever we hear students sleeping with teachers, I go, yeah, well, I've been doing it for a while. And so anyway.
What's hilarious and most hilarious about it is, Zach Wilson went to BYU, a Mormon university, and their nickname, the Cougars.
The Cougars, yes. Absolutely. I mean, it's such fodder for jokes. It really is. And that's, honestly, if you're going to have a scandal that's going to break out, and I put this in quotation marks, that's an entertaining scandal for a little while, and all the guys, of course, like I said, the inner 14-year-olds are going, that really isn't the big deal, the own that you think it's going to be. You just actually increased this dude's rep. You didn't lower it, Anyway, speaking of quarterbacks, so Baker Mayfield finally got his release. He was traded to the Carolina Panthers. And basically, as I thought, Cleveland was going to have to eat some of that contract.
Most of it.
Yeah, they ended up eating about $10 million of it. And Mayfield agreed to restructure his deal into makeable incentives. So he's only going to cost about $4.5 million and a 5th-round pick to Carolina. So honestly, Carolina came out really well on the end of this deal.
Yeah,
and we've talked the past couple of weeks about the problem the Browns have right now is we don't know what the discipline's going to be yet for Deshaun Watson. Today on Twitter, they had somebody just speculating it could be just 5 or 6 games, which I just cannot see. I'm sorry, 24, maybe 25 incidents now, people claiming. So it's just going to really that would be a black eye on the shield that Roger Goodell just can't sit by and do. I mean, he's got to make it at least a year suspension. So 2 questions for y'all. Number one, does this make Carolina a better team than it was with Sam Darnold? And is this enough to save Matt Rhule's job? Bob, we'll start with you because I know what Sean's going to say about his boy from the Sooner Nation.
Well, hey, listen, it's not enough to save Matt Rhule's job because Matt Rhule's just not a good coach. But I do think Baker Mayfield to the Panthers makes this team exponentially better. I have said to numerous people that if Christian McCaffrey is healthy, this team has playoff caliber talent littered throughout their roster. Baker Mayfield is a significant upgrade over Sam Darnold and Matt Corral, who at this point is an undeveloped rookie. I think Corral has the makings of a solid NFL quarterback, but at this point, Baker Mayfield is a plug and play. And as long as that offensive line can come together just a little bit, and that's still the weak point on this Carolina Panthers team, then this team could actually be a 500 team. I still see them getting off to a slow start, which will be what ultimately cost Matt Rhule his job. But Baker Mayfield he's a gamer. He's nowhere near an elite quarterback. He's middle of the pack. But again, that's a significant upgrade over what they had over Sam Darnold. And I think that this team is going to surprise a lot of people this year.
How about you, Sean?
I think that Baker makes them a exponentially better team. Baker is experienced. He knows how to win. And, I mean, just look at the job that he did in Cleveland. Took it from being one of the laughing stocks of the league to being a playoff team. I agree with Bob. No matter who you have behind center, the linchpin as to the Panthers' success or not is going to be if McCaffrey can stay healthy.
Yeah, you read Twitter, and of course, Mayfield is a cancer. Mayfield's poison. Mayfield stinks. All these things, and I just pointed out. I said, to me, there's a percentage of Saints fans who tend to dump on any quarterback that's not playing for the Saints or doesn't have, multiple Super Bowl rings. I just feel like you're either a good quarterback or you're garbage. And some Ralph Marlboro was out there really kind of comparing, saying that, Winston and Mayfield, they're really not that far apart in what they have done with their teams.
Yeah, numbers wise, yeah.
Yeah. Talent wise, there may be a significant gap, but, as far as what they've done with both those teams, and both of those guys have had issues with coaching, questionable coaching. I mean, you don't get much worse. I'm sorry, you don't get much worse than Hugh Jackson. And that was his first head coach for Baker Mayfield. And then he had Greg Williams as interim head coach. Then you get Freddie Kitchens, who was probably an okay offensive coordinator, but was not head coach material. That doesn't excuse this thing that Baker is accused of as far as leadership problems and immaturity and things like that. But if Mayfield ended up on a team with good coaching, and Carolina is not that team, but he ends up on a team with good coaching or somebody that can develop a quarterback, he can be pretty dangerous. I'm not saying that he is going to be a difference maker. I still think Carolina and Atlanta are going to be battling out the cellar division because, first off, I think Christian McCaffrey's done, honestly. I think he's just another hit away from being injured again. I think their offensive line has gaping holes in it, but he has talent at receiver. He has a good defense when healthy.
Yeah.
So if Christian McCaffrey can play at least 10 games and be productive in those 10 games, Carolina could get to 500, like you said. I think Matt Rhule loses his job regardless.
Yeah.
And the last thing I read before coming on this show, now with the idea of with Watson possibly getting suspended, Baker Mayfield gone, there are people on Twitter, sports writers, speculating they should go ahead and make the trade for Jimmy Garoppolo because they don't have enough money tied up in quarterbacks. I mean, come on, what's another 20 million tied up in a quarterback? Let's have
the only way that they could manage to pull that off is if they were able to somehow or another avoid that Watson contract.
Right.
Well, yeah. I mean, they said they have 48 million in cap space. So you want to spend it all on quarterbacks? And again, Garoppolo's a 1-year rental. And he's coming off of an injury.
People, ever since Baker was coming out in the draft, people have loved to dump all over him. And I mean, the comments about him being the next Johnny Manziel. Look, you're talking about a guy that in 4 years' time walked on at 2 major Division I programs and winded up as the starting quarterback. And in that 4-year time frame, he went from being a walk-on to hoisting the Heisman Trophy.
Again, like I said from the beginning, I think Mayfield has just had terrible coaching in Cleveland. I think they put some combustible personalities in that locker room. That's always been my problem with OBJ. He may be a good receiver. So is Deshaun Jackson. But he's a combustible personality. It's a tough – you have to have a strong locker room that can control him and keep him focused on just being a receiver instead of being the attention getter. That was his problem in New York. That seems to be his problem in Cleveland. With Los Angeles, you have Aaron Donald on that team. So he came in, after the trade deadline, he really hadn't been there for a whole year. And I think that's why one of the reasons they haven't brought him back.
I agree.
He was a rental. That he hasn't really gotten into a position where he can start, lack of a better term, strutting, to be the center of attention. So, it's. I think Mayfield had talent around him, but he was in a tough situation. I think he just needs to be on a team that he isn't the focal point at this point in his career. He needs to grow up some. He needs to experience some success, but have strong leadership in a locker room. You know, that's just my take with Mayfield.
Well, I agree completely. I'm not going to sit here and compare Baker to Drew Brees or Tom Brady or Aaron Rodgers, because as much as I like the kid, I don't think he's that good.
Yeah.
But he's an upgrade from Sam Darnold.
Mm-hmm.
And that's ultimately what it boils down to, is you're not going to win with Sam Darnold. But for a week at least, or a couple weeks at least, Sam Darnold looked competent with Carolina when they had a healthy team. You know, you think about that week 2 beating they gave the Saints. Sam Darnold looked competent there. And I think Baker Mayfield can look competent there, you know, as long as the pressure's not on him to win it by himself.
Right.
And week 1 is going to be must-see TV.
Oh, yes, absolutely. Especially because I really don't think that it's going to be Jacoby Brissett as the quarterback. Yeah. It's not going to be Deshaun Watson. So, yeah, it's – I have Carolina still in third place, but I think they're going to be better than a picking in the top 10 draft team, barring injuries, if that defense can stay healthy. But because I still think that offensive line's a mess. And I think without Christian McCaffrey, that running game is shot. They really just can't run the ball consistently without him, because you don't have a good running back. You don't have a good offensive line. So Baker's going to have to move a lot, because that's what happened to I just forgot the name of that quarterback. The guy you saw ghosts from the Jets. The other guy.
Darnold.
Sam Darnold. Thank you. I just drew a blank on his name. But yeah, Darnold, when he felt the pressure to win the game on his own, that's when he fell apart.
Yep.
You know, that really is. Okay, so speak one more thing about quarterbacks. The Boot Crew media. There are somebody on Twitter who I've just recently discovered. I don't know how long they've been around, but their stuff is starting to pop up a lot more in my feed. They tried to put together a top 10 list of Saints quarterbacks. It was questionable at best. And I've watched the Saints for a long, long, long time. And I really sat and thought about this. And I'm like, I'm having a hard time coming up with 10 names for a top 10 list. I can do about 8. That's about the maximum I can come up with. After 8, you really, I mean, are you going to put a guy like, are you going to put Bobby Scott in this list? Are you putting Bobby Douglas in this list? I mean, guys that start, Ed Hargett, you know, are you going to put these guys? I mean, guys who actually started a few games. I'm not talking about, you know, the career. Oh, we're not putting Heath Schuler in any list. Heath Schuler.
To say that he is dumb as a pile of bricks really does disservice to bricks.
The thing about Heath Schuler is I still don't understand why he won the Heisman Trophy, you know, at Tennessee.
Fulmer is a good politician.
I just was Fulmer the head coach there at that time. Yep. I don't know if he started with Heath Schuler, but yeah, I thought it was somebody else. I have this gap in my head for Tennessee. There's Johnny Majors, and then there's Philip Fulmer. Who the coaches were in the 20 years between those names, I have no idea. It's hard for me to. It's like Georgia, it's Vince Dooley and
Mark Richt.
And and now the guy they've got there, Kirby Smart. But in between, I have no idea. I don't know who was there before Dooley. I have no. I don't. College football is just one of those things that I can name every LSU head
I'm
coach.
almost positive that Fulmer was Schuler's coach.
Let me just see, because you really got me wondering there. Yeah, I can, and I think that's where this list comes from. Let me go get this list real quick. So the top 10, I mean, number one is obvious, Drew Brees. Okay, I think anybody with an IQ above room temperature is going to pick Drew Brees as the number one Saints quarterback. But 2 through 6, there are some questions. Who you would have. And these are all legitimate names. Archie Manning at 2, Bobby Hebert at 3, Aaron Brooks at 4, Billy Kilmer at 5, and Jim Everett at 6. I quibble with the order of some of these names.
Absolutely.
I would have Archie at number 2 because that's me being the loyal, longtime Saints fan. But I would not have Hebert at 3. I have Brooks at 3. I probably have Jim.
I'd have Everett at 3.
I'll probably have Jim Everett at 4 and Hebert 5 and Kilmer 6 out of that group. But here's 7 through 10. Teddy Bridgewater, Jake Delhomme, Jameis Winston, and Taysom Hill. Now, I'm not saying you put this list together based on guys whose names you knew, but you put this list together because you're 20 years old and these are the only guys that you knew. I mean, Jameis Winston, Taysom Hill should not be on this list at all. It's you have to excuse Winston because he's only
played half a season.
Yeah,
not even.
Yeah, and Jake Delhomme is even fewer because Delhomme's actually only started, I think, 2 games, and both were under Ditka. He's finished games, but he just and Teddy Bridgewater. I mean, come on, it's the same problem with Winston. 5 games. That's not enough large enough sample size.
Agreed.
I mean, Bob, who would you have your top 6, and then we'll go through like 7 through 10. Who could possibly be?
Well, yeah, my top 6, I agree with you guys, and I agree with the names that Boo Crew Media had. And by the way, our John Hendricks is a contributor for Boo Crew Media,
Okay.
Which just makes me chuckle a little bit. But listen, obviously, again, Brees is number 1. I draw a lot of criticism for my 2, 3, and 4. 2, first of all, the second most talented quarterback ever to play for the Saints is Jim Everett, talent-wise. Aaron Brooks is my number 2, though, because of the results that he had on the field for a little bit longer than Everett. Everett is 3, and I'm convinced that if the Dome Patrol would have held together another season or 2, or they would have got Everett a season or 2 earlier, the Saints would have had at least a couple Lombardis during that era. Archie Manning is 4, followed by Hebert at 5 and Kilmer at 6.
Brooks has the second best statistics of all the Saints quarterbacks behind Drew Brees, but I feel like Brooks just so woefully underachieved, I knock him down. Hebert, I blame him for a lot of losses, especially in the playoffs.
Fair.
So I knock him down a lot because I felt like you were gifted a great defense. Yeah, it would have been nice if your running game would have been consistent. I mean, because you really had Ruben Mays for 86 and 87.
Mm-hmm.
He starts getting hurt in 88, and then Dalton starts to come up in 88. You've got an incredible season out of Dalton Hill in 89, and Hebert gets benched that year because he was so bad. He was so inconsistent. And then you sit out 90, 91, 92, you've got no real running back. anymore. I mean, you're using Fred McAfee. Vaughn Dunbar was a bust. Ironhead Hayward was fat. So I mean, that's really, if you would have had a running back in either 91 or 92 to the level of a peak Ruben Mays, or imagine a Deuce McAllister on that team, you probably win, or you will win at least one of those playoff games. I think you beat Atlanta for sure.
Sure. You probably hold off Philadelphia too.
Yeah, you probably don't have that fourth quarter meltdown, because you get some first downs in that fourth quarter against Philadelphia, you probably come out of that game the winner, because it really, that fourth quarter that Abear just collapsed.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why I knock him down so much. And Jim, his problem was, you're right, we didn't have him long enough. And then his final year in 1996, Saints front office sabotaged him. You let Quinn Early go, you let Wesley Walls go. You had an opportunity to draft Eddie George. You don't draft Eddie George. So it's hard to find fault with Everett, because I thought the 96 season they torpedoed him.
And it was a disintegrating team the 2 years before that. So
your defense was just really collapsing on there. Yeah, and that's why I'm saying Aaron Brooks had Joe Horn. Aaron Brooks had a lot of talent on that. You had Joe Horn.
But listen, Archie Manning had Galbraith, Muncie, Wes Chandler, 82. Ike Harris.
Ike Harris
was a solid receiver.
Henry Childs.
Childs. So you can make the same thing you said about Aaron Brooks. You can make a case for Archie Manning, in my opinion.
But his best years as a Saint happened to be when those guys were there.
True.
I think the turning point for Archie was 1979. Instead of drafting defensive players, they drafted Russell Erxleben in the first round. That hurt a lot. And I think the poor drafting after round one from 76 to 80 really is what hurt the Saints. They lost. They didn't get the quality players they needed to kind of fill out that roster. You had some talented guys, and then of course you had a drug problem too. But that really hurts. And I felt that. I figured you would, John. I figured that. The problem with, then Archie started getting hurt again. Archie got hurt in 81, his first year with Bum Phillips, and I think that was part of the reason why Bum Phillips moved on to Ken Stabler.
Yeah.
And I'm putting Kilmer at 6, only because for what the Saints were trying to do, an expansion team, Kilmer really kind of willed that team to win in games they really shouldn't have won. And you had coaches that were constantly pulling Kilmer out. They were trying to start somebody else. I mean, Gary Quazzo and he split most of 67. In 68 and 69, you started, getting guys like Carl Sweeten, Ronnie South, and I know John's like I can't believe he's saying these names. I don't even know who the hell these people are. And Ed Hargett in 69. They were constantly putting people in. And Kilmer, believe it or not, Billy Kilmer held the record until Drew Brees broke it against the Giants in 2016, 2015?
2015 is when he broke it. Brees had tied it, I think, in 2009 or something like that.
Yeah, he did. 2009 against the Lions. Kilmer threw 6 touchdown passes versus the St. Louis Cardinals, and they were the St. Louis Cardinals back then. Charlie Johnston was the quarterback for the Cardinals, for those keeping score at home. But yeah, it was a shootout, and This was in the era where, you could go beat up on the receivers and things like that. And Kilmer still threw 6 touchdown passes. And that record stood that long. Nobody else had ever come close until Brees. So I guess, I shouldn't say could come close, because Aaron Brooks did throw 5 touchdown passes versus the Giants. And was that in 2003?
I thought it was 02, but you might be right.
It's a cell phone game. It's the Joe Horn cell phone game. That's when Brooks threw 5 touchdown passes. But I think it was 2003, because we were driving back. I think we were either driving back to New Orleans or we were driving back to Lafayette. I don't remember, but I just remember listening to it in the car on the way in. So, yeah. So if you're going to put together 6 through 10, and like I said, I'm having a hard time just coming up with 8, who would be your number 7 on this list? And I'll throw out some names, because I'm not going to throw out the Billy Joels. I'm not going to throw out, Kerry Rum Collins and people like that. Out of the names, Ken Stabler, Dave Wilson, Wade Wilson, and oh God, I can't believe I'm going to throw this name out there, John Fourcade.
I was gonna say two more you should add, but I wasn't thinking Fourcade. What about Jeff Blake?
Jeff Blake. There we go. Jeff Blake.
And what about Steve Walsh?
And Steve Walsh. There we go. That's a good group of names to pick from, honestly. If you're looking through,
good group might be a stretch.
Yeah, we're putting good in quotation marks, because I you can't throw Heath Schuler and the Billy Joes and that in there. I mean, that's just garbage.
What about my man Werfel?
No.
Listen, I was rooting. I rooted for Danny Werfel.
I did too.
But listen. As far as it's interesting, because the Billy Joels, Werfel, Schuler, Richard Todd, they'd be on your they'd be on your worst your top 10 worst Saints quarterbacks. But one name that has always ricocheted through my head in Saints history. One name belongs on both lists. The bottom half of the top 10 good ones, and in the top 10 bad ones, and that's Dave Wilson. First of all, I put Jeff Blake at number 7 and Steve Walsh at 8. Just because of what they were able to do with the teams around them. By the way, Jeff Blake was having a hell of a year in 2000.
He was.
Before he went down.
He was.
I would put Dave Wilson at 9 or 10 of both lists, ironically enough.
And Dave Wilson has probably the biggest comeback in Saints history against the Bengals in 1987. The Bengals were really taking it to the Saints. They knocked Bobby Hebert out. And the Saints were on that winning streak. And Dave Wilson comes in, and he doesn't do that much, but he does throw the ball around. He does have an impact. And the Saints end up winning that ball game because of that. So, but hang on. I had to pull this up because I love pulling this statistic out when we're talking about Richard Todd. Okay, so Richard Todd's claim to fame was he took the Jets to the 1982. I think it's 82.
Yeah. Well, 82 season, yeah.
Game.
Yeah.
82 season. Okay. He threw 5 interceptions in that game. 5. Okay. And the Jets lost. And this is the peak New York sack exchange. So their defense is what kept them in this game. It was against Miami. You're playing David friggin' Woodley. And you throw 5 interceptions. That's what cost you that game. Okay, so now he comes to the Saints for a first-round draft choice, no less. We gave up a first-rounder for this clown. All right? I wanted Warren Moon, who was coming out of the CFL, We don't get him. We get Richard Todd. So this is week 3. Richard Todd starts against the 49ers. This is his stat line. 2 for 7, 5 yards, 3 interceptions. I'm like, oh my God. Oh, why am I watching this? Ken Stabler came in and almost won the game for him. Richard Todd wasn't sacked either. These just interceptions he just threw. You know, can you imagine the Twitter universe if, let's just say, Jameis Winston or Taysom Hill or Andy Dalton come out and go 2 for 7 for 5 yards and 3 interceptions in the first quarter? What that would look like?
Meltdown.
Yeah, Stabler went 14 of 27, 157 yards, 2 touchdowns, 2 interceptions. He threw his fair, and 2 sacks because he was practically immobile by that time. In fact, he retired that season. But yeah, Richard Todd. Yeah, that's before my time, Alan. Yeah, I know. I'm telling you, I was watching these games with Richard Todd. I was so angry. Every time he'd go out there, I get angrier. Our first Monday night win, unfortunately, Richard Todd was the quarterback. It was 84 against the Steelers. We beat the Steelers. No thanks to Richard Todd. I mean, Dennis Winston picked off a pass and ran in for a touchdown. He came from the Steelers, so that was the deciding game. But yeah, so okay. So who would you put at 7 though out of that list? Would you put Jeff Blake at 7? I think I would. I would. I probably have him behind. There's an argument he could even go up to 6 ahead of Billy Kilmer. But I would stick him at 7 only because he didn't finish the season.
Right. Same.
Yeah. If he goes and starts in 2001, then we probably have to put him in the top 6, even top 5. But at this point, he's 7. So you got Dave Wilson. We'll have him at 9 or 10. So you're left now with Ken Stabler. What other names did I throw out there? Steve Walsh. Steve Walsh. Ken Stabler and Steve Walsh. Where would you put those guys?
I'd put Walsh ahead of Stabler.
Same. Yeah, I'd go Walsh number 8. I mean, he held down the fort well enough. Yeah, people always talk about John Forcade, and Forcade certainly had his moments. It was Walsh that was the primary quarterback when Hebert was holding out. And you gotta hate what the Saints gave up for him because he just wasn't that good. But I mean, he was serviceable. Skill wise, Walsh was Danny Werfel before Danny Werfel. I think. And I'm basing that mainly on arm strength and football IQ. And like I said, Walsh was serviceable enough, to get a 500 team to the playoffs, in Hebert's absence.
And sure, I'm going to ask you your opinion about Ken Stabler in a minute, but so. My thing about Walsh was Walsh took the Bears to the playoffs too and won a playoff game with the Bears. Walsh's personality, I think, and this is what Bobby Hebert said about him. Walsh's personality was such that he was kind of a prima donna, and had a hard time relating to the guys in that locker room. And I think that kind of made guys not play as hard as they probably could have for him. They didn't go that extra step. And I think that, but, Walsh had his limitations. There's too many plays that you watch in 1990 and 91 when he filled in for Hebert, where he simply does not step into the throw. The rush is coming. He's stepping out of the play, trying to throw all with his arm because he doesn't want to get hit. And I think that kind of stuff shows up in the film, and the players see that. So it's hard for them to play for a guy like that. And I think that's what ultimately doomed him with the Saints. But He did get the Saints' last win of the season in 1993 when he won 8 games. Again, after 5-0, he came in and started that last game and won. I thought one of his better games, unfortunately, is a loss against the 49ers in 91. And he's partially to blame for that loss because he mishandled the snap and tried to spike the ball and it fumbled and, he didn't jump on the ball immediately. It's tough. Yeah, I know. Draw straws. Yeah. Ken Stabler. Sean, do you remember the snake being with the Saints?
Oh yeah.
What was
when it comes to Stabler, in a lot of ways, and you probably could say the same for his Houston teammate Earl Campbell. By the time they got to the Saints, they were just pretty much used up.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I think that's really what hurt Stabler more than anything else.
He was not the snake when he got to New Orleans.
No, and he certainly wasn't playing behind Gene Upshaw and Art Shell either, and Jim Otto or Darby or any of those guys that were on the team, the Raiders teams. The hokey guy, John tells a story about, he's walking in the locker room and then they see him like stop. He picks up his leg and completely turns his knee around and so he can walk some more. That's how bad his knees were by that point. And Stabler himself said he should have retired in 82. He stayed on a year too long, actually almost 2 years too long. 83, it was tough for him to finish games. Somebody got a good hit on him, he was out.
Yeah. And Dave Wilson, by the way, did throughout his career did a better job coming off of the bench than he did as a starter.
Oh yeah, absolutely. If I could describe Dave Wilson, he's a relief pitcher. He's not a starter, and the longer he's out there, the more limited he looks. But he can give you things. He can probably give you a quarter and a half, 2 quarters of solid quarterback play, and I think that was the problem at this point. Yeah, Willie Sneed's number 10. And Walsh won a national championship but he was on a loaded Miami team.
Oh yeah.
And Jimmy Johnson knew what he was doing with that guy. So yeah, it's we paid way too much. Now, did you guys ever hear the rumor of who the Raiders were willing to trade to the Saints for Bobby Aber in 1990?
I've heard it. I'm trying to remember who it was.
James Jett was one of them, and that's only because I knew James in passing. He was a drinking buddy for a short time. I think James Jett was one of them, but that's other than that, it was I don't recall now.
The Raiders were interested in shipping Marcus Allen to the Saints.
Yeah, we talked about that a few weeks ago.
Yeah, in exchange for Bobby Aber. And Finks said no because Finks wanted to break Aber and have him come crawling back, and you're going to play for what I say you're going to play for. So, you look at Marcus Allen, what he did when he got to Kansas City, and you could just imagine what he might have been like with New Orleans. I don't know if he's as productive, but he gives you something. Definitely gave you a lot more than what you got out of there. So, it would have. That's one of those what if trades. I have a couple of them. One of the other what if trade I have, or one of the other what if trades I had, were the Saints in 2010. I've talked about this before. Try to trade with Buffalo to get Marshawn Lynch. Not Marshawn. To get Lynch. I said Marshawn Lynch. And Buffalo turned him down, but traded him to Seattle for far, far less. The Saints were willing to give up. And I to this day, I think about what would have happened in 2010 because that was the year we went through like 5 backs, if you guys remember. You know, because of all the injuries. I mean, that was what the hell was his name now? I can picture him. In fact, he played against Seattle and he ran all over Seattle that earlier that season. The
Julius
undrafted
Jones.
agent. Who's it?
I thought you were talking about Julius Jones.
No. Earlier in the season, at home in the Dome. The undrafted free agent, number 29.
Oh, Chris Ivory.
Chris Ivory, thank you, Chris Ivory. He ran all over, and the famous quote was from Pete Carroll that Ivory was a bad dude. You know, meaning that Chris Ivory was the one that gave them the most trouble, and that was why they went after Lynch. But yeah, the Saints getting lynched. Now, granted, who knows what they give up? But you probably don't get Cam Jordan. You probably don't get Mark Ingram if you have Lynch on the team, because you finish better off, and you don't have it as good of a draft pick to get Cam Jordan. So in 2011, but yeah, it's a what if you can play. The same with the Saints. If they don't trade away their right to get Bruce Clark, trade away a first-round draft pick in '83 to get Bruce Clark from who was a good defensive lineman, but they sent that first-round pick to the Packers. Imagine the Saints in '83. You have Ken Stable on the roster. You have a recovering Dave Wilson because he was injured all of '82. Do you make a draft pick and go after a quarterback in the first round in '83, the quarterback class?
Oh God!
Of course,
but we would have drafted somebody like Ken O'Brien.
No, Ken O'Brien was a pretty solid quarterback, though.
We would have drafted Todd Blackledge, who would have knocked the Chiefs out.
Right.
Get Todd Blackledge, because that's the guy with all the decorations in hell. He played right there in the Dome. He played in the Sugar Bowl, so that bum's like, I watched him play in the Dome. He'll fit right in over here. So we get Todd Blackledge. But yeah, so
hell of an announcer. How good of a quarterback is he? He's a hell of an announcer.
That's right. I think about that with Gary Danielson whenever he does college football on CBS.
God, I hate him. He was a good quarterback and terrible announcer.
The funny thing about Gary Danielson, sometimes I used to get him confused all the time. He and Eric Hipple used to take turns starting for Detroit. But it's like Gary would go back in after somebody just completely destroyed Hipple. I mean, just look up on YouTube, Eric Hipple gets hit, and watch the hits that you see. There's one, I think it's Anderson for the Bucks, comes in, helmet goes this way, chin strap goes that way, Hipple hits the ground on the sideline. I mean, they killed this man.
Yeah.
The only person, and there's lots of footage of Lions quarterbacks getting killed. The only other person I've ever seen when I thought they were literally dead on the field, Joe Ferguson gets hit.
Oh, I was going to say that too.
By the '85 Bears, and it's I want to say it's not Wilbur Marshall. It might be Otis
Wilson.
Otis Wilson. It hits him, but it doesn't like that bad of a hit. But Ferguson just lays flat out. He's not moving. His hands are wide open. He's in the crucifix position. It's unbelievable. He's just like, that dude is dead.
Ferguson was limp in midair.
Yeah. And Ferguson was already old. I mean, he was the Buffalo Bills quarterback in the early 70s. Mm-hmm. Here he is playing, Archie's already retired. Plunkett's on his way out. Pastorini's already gone. He's on the race circuit by that point. So Ferguson's still out there playing, and he's playing for the Woeful Lions, and they kill him. But yeah.
Another Louisiana boy.
Yeah. Yep. Yes, he was.
When Terry Bradshaw got to high school, he broke all of Ferguson's records.
So yeah, so that's why I was saying, we pick on a top 10 list. It's really hard to come up with 10 names because I mean, like here we are, we're talking about Steve Walsh, we're talking about Ken Stabler, and none of these guys are really memorable Saints quarterbacks. They really aren't.
Well, a lot of them, A, played on really bad teams, and B, the sample size that you have just isn't big enough to uh, legitimize them being at the top of a top 10 list.
Well, right, and that's why, if Jameis Winston, and I understand why they put Jameis on the list because of his talent. With one good season in 2022, Jameis Winston is probably your sixth best quarterback in Saints history.
Absolutely. I mean, honestly, here we go. So you take a team, let's just take a team like the Pittsburgh Steelers, for example. Put your top 10 list of Steelers quarterbacks. You got Bradshaw and you have Roethlisberger. Where do you go from there?
Mark Malone?
Oh, well, I mean,
yeah,
it's pretty easy to spit out. Mark Malone had some playoff success. Neil O'Donnell had some playoff success. Cordell Stewart had some nice stats. Tommy Maddox had some nice stats. And then after that, you're in Saints realm. You're talking about Joe Gilliam, short sample size. Terry Hanratty kept getting benched for Bradshaw. Cliff Stout was literally kicked into the USFL by the Steeler fans. It's players like that. Kent Graham, players like that.
Yeah, I mean, it's so when we talk about 10 quarterbacks of a 50-year-old franchise, the Steelers are even older than that. Jim Finks was a Steelers quarterback.
Bobby Lane.
Bobby Lane. You know who Jim Finks beat out to be the Steelers quarterback?
Was it Johnny Unitas?
It was Johnny Unitas. He beat out Johnny Unitas to be the quarterback. I mean, they had him on the taxi squad.
They had Len Dawson on the taxi squad at one point too.
And that's the old name for the practice squad, but that was the taxi squad team. So yeah, I mean, you go to the Raiders. Okay, so you've got LaMonica, you've got Stabler, you've got Plunkett. Okay, where do you go from there? Where does Rich Gannon fit in there? You're having a hard time because you're not putting Mark Wilson in that list. Mark Wilson squandered good Raiders teams. You're certainly not putting
Todd Marinovich.
Todd Marinovich, you're not putting him in there. I mean, you're not putting the Jamarcus Russell anywhere near that list. So yeah, I mean, Tom Flores. It's hard. It's when you have a quarterback who has success for a long, long time with a franchise, and you look at a team like the Miami Dolphins, for example, who went from Bob Greasy to Dan Marino with a 2-year interval of David Woodley. But yeah, you go to those levels. Bob Greasy, here he is starting in 69, 70, all the way to 80, 81, but then 83 to the mid 90s. Oh no, 99. I'm sorry, 99 is when Marino finally retired. So yeah, I mean, that's a long period to try and come up with great quarterbacks. So top 10. Oh, Mike Tomczak. Yeah, Mike Tomczak. There's a K in that one, but yeah, he was the Bears quarterback. Actually, he's the Bears quarterback who beat the Saints in 1990 in the playoffs.
Yeah,
miserable. Actually, the officials beat us in that game. That's beside the
also
point.
Yes. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, you guys make great points, and that's why it's important to find a young quarterback that you can hopefully get, say, even 10 years out of, and more if you're lucky, because you could talk about every franchise is like that. And it's very, very, very rare that you get two very good quarterbacks following each other, let alone two Hall of Famers like the 49ers had with Montana and Young, and the Packers have with Favre and Karen Rodgers. Players like that. You look at Denver is still trying to find a replacement for Elway. And I know they got Peyton Manning, and they got a very good Peyton Manning for 3 years, but he fell off a cliff quickly. The Cowboys went from Staubach to Danny White, who was extremely underrated, and then a couple bad years before they had Troy Aikman. And then between Aikman and, I guess you could make a case for Romo, but you're talking almost a decade there.
Yeah.
It's something literally every single team goes through.
Yeah, it's hard because you if you have a good quarterback, they're going to start for a decade or more. Okay. And if you don't have a great quarterback, then you're cycling through guys every couple of years. It's not like a running back where injuries take their toll. And, so you have more running backs come in. Oh, here we go. Shots fired. Now you won a playoff game. We can give him that.
He did.
Him that. Yeah.
Against the Steelers.
Against the Steelers. I'm still blown away by that game, that he won that game.
He did. And to be fair, Butler, I liked Brian Greasy. But Greasy's teammates didn't like Brian Greasy.
And I just couldn't figure out what was wrong with Brian Greasy. I really couldn't. It was tough to, especially when he got to. Well, I knew why he was going to fail in Miami. I mean, you're playing on your dad's team, which is the same reason why I think Eli and Peyton wanted nothing to do with New Orleans or playing for the Saints, because you're playing on your dad's team, and it's just so much pressure to do that. But still, it just I don't know. I always thought Brian Greasy, if he was in the right situation, was going to be able to be like his dad and just run an offense, be a game manager, and he just never could. Yeah, Jake Plummer was there.
Jeff Plummer succeeded Greasy. Plummer put up some nice numbers. He was a scapegoat for that AFC Championship loss against the Steelers when that entire Broncos team decided to stay in the locker room. And then Shanahan traded up the following year to get Smoking Jay Cutler, and the rest was history.
Jay Cutler, Jay Cutler. That was when he really looked like a franchise quarterback when he was with Denver. When he got to the Bears, he became Jeff George. It's interesting to watch how you really have to be, and this is ultimately what it boils down to, going back to the beginning of the show, for Baker Mayfield, Jameis Winston, a lot of these guys, you really have to be with the right organization from the beginning and really mold that on what you do well, and so you can produce. And the bland face cannon. I'll tell you, when they started adding those cigarettes to his mouth, it really fit, because it looked like he really just didn't give a damn about anything.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to be at that right organization that knows not only your strengths and weaknesses, puts a coaching staff and a team around your strengths, and really tries to mold you into being a good quarterback, but you also have the internal drive to be a better player, and not just be a talented guy who can just show up there and teams roll over for you. That's always, to me, that's one of the biggest problems that you have with draft bust is, number one, you have guys who aren't willing to put in the work. Jamarcus Russell's a great example of that. Ryan Leaf's another one. But then you have guys who are willing to put in the work, but just are not leaders, or just are not guys that inspire your team to play well. They say, and then they have the high school Harry guys, it seem to do all the cheerleading stuff, but at the end of the day, they don't really lead either. They just do cheerleading stuff. So it's just tough. Oh, you can see the scores. He can. I guess he can see the scores when I do this. Yeah, the Saints scored. That is the infamous Monday night game against the Raiders from 1979.
So you're going to turn it off at the end of the first half, right?
That's exactly it. I only watched the first half of that game. I never watched the second half because Cliff Harris was benched for some reason. They said a discipline reason. He was benched, and he didn't play until late in the second quarter, and they turned him on in the third quarter. And holy shit, that's all it took. And at 79, I think I said this before. Yeah, Chuck Muncie's on there right now. That's when he was officially announced as the 1,000-yard rusher, the first 1,000-yard rusher in Saints history. I had the Falcons game opening weekend is the same thing. It's that first half they score all their points, and then they just can't do anything in the second half offensively. So, last question of the night, and this is I led the show, and I gave the show a John Bon Jovi song, "Bad Medicine." But question for you, Sean: name a Saints player, not Michael Thomas, but name a Saints player coming back from injury who they really need to. The Saints are really counting on this guy to come back and play strong. Can you think of a guy?
I would say Marcus May would be one.
Okay.
The guy in the picture, I'm drawing a blank.
Davenport,
yeah.
Okay.
Those are the two that came to mind immediately.
How about you, Bob?
Outside of the two obvious, which are Michael Thomas and Jameis Winston, you got to go with Davenport. Just because of the way he had the best year of his career last year down the stretch. And Calvin, I'm getting to you. And so you got to believe that Davenport has got to put it together, and he's in a contract year too. What he does is key to that defense. But I'll skip over Davenport too, and I'll go with Will Lutz. This team missed 7 extra points last year. And you can point to 2 direct games and probably 1 to 2 other ones where kicking woes cost them the game, a win. And they only needed one of those wins to get into the playoffs. Lutz, people were talking about, well, what's wrong with Will Lutz? Has he lost? And I wrote about it too. Has Will lost his confidence down the stretch in 2020? Well, it turned out he was playing with that groin injury that caused him to have surgery. And I think all eyes should be on him and how he recovers through training camp, because when he's on, there's no better clutch kicker in the game. And his range is just absolutely incredible. So, other than the obvious answers, Winston, Thomas, Davenport, and May is a good one too, Sean. I'm going to go with Will Lutz.
Yeah, I agree with all those names. I'm going to also talk about on the offensive line, guys like Ryan Ramczyk. Andres Pete, for all the the crap that we give these guys, Andres Pete, he's got to stay healthy. Or play most of the season, because you can get by for a couple of weeks with Throckmorton. You can get by with Hurst, but when you have a rookie left tackle that's trying to come in and get a job in Penning, you've got a struggling right guard in Cesar Ruiz. All these weapons that they have at receiver, the running game that we talk about being so important. If that offensive line is a sieve and they're coming into Winston free and clear, I don't care what weapons that you have at receiver. I don't care, you have Alvin Kamara there. You're not getting anything going. And we saw that against Carolina, where that offensive line was just terrible against Carolina, and they would just send guys in after Winston. So to me, those offensive linemen have to be healthy and they have to produce. I want Pete to stay healthy, because if Ruiz continues being a looking like a 3-year-old trying to, and I'm probably insulting 3-year-olds, a 3-year-old trying to run by looking at his feet the whole time and falling down and things like that. That's where Throckmorton can come in and replace him for a little bit. But if you got Hurst. Or Hurst. But if you got Hurst and Throckmorton playing the left side, so you're now relying on rookies or undrafted free agents playing that right side, it's not going to be pretty. I mean, Alvin Kamara was getting hit in the backfield way too often last year, and we blamed it on the receivers, but it was also a crappy offensive line. So those are the guys I'm watching too.
It was, and that's big. Do you guys realize? And I after researching it, I've had it in a couple of my articles. The starting five of the Saints offensive line played together for 22 snaps in 2021.
Yeah.
And even scarier, these 7 or 8 games that Ramczyk missed completely. The Saints averaged 13 points a game. So yes. This team, we could point to the 4 quarterbacks being used and no weapons at wide receiver, but you still had Kamara, and he averaged a career low 3.7 yards per average or per carry. That's not on Kamara. That's on the offensive line. Kamara had to pull a Barry Sanders and dodge and avoid 3 guys before he even got to the line of scrimmage. You're not going to have a successful offense. With the injuries that this line had last year.
Yeah, and you want Winston drop back there in a 7-step drop, 5-step drop, and just let it fly. It's just not going to happen. He's not going to have the time to do it.
No, they'll be back there waiting for him.
Yeah, they'll be blitzing the crap out of him and sit and have the linebackers sit on those underneath routes, waiting for the ball to come. Just wait. They'll let Olave run deep all day long, and Hardy run deep all day long because they know that he's not going to have time to find him.
Yeah,
they're going to make him run, make him get rid of the ball. So
that's also part of the reason why Winston threw 30 interceptions in 2019. He didn't have He did not have the offensive line that Tom Brady had.
Yeah. So it's to me. Yes, those guys, defense, yes. Will Lutz, absolutely. They've got to be healthy. I mean, there's so many positions we can talk about that have to be healthy. But I think you can survive with Michael Thomas missing a couple games. You can probably survive with Davenport missing a couple games, or because you've
they have great depth there.
You got enough depth, but offensive line, you don't have it. We already saw the kicking game. You just don't have it. It's hard to find a good kicker. So you've got to get those guys out there playing. And they've got to play for a full season or as much of the season as they can. Because, and to me, most of the playoff losses, I'm going to put that on injuries on this team. By the time they got to January, they were pretty beat up, so it was tough.
The Minneapolis Miracle, we only dressed 7 offensive linemen for that game.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's all we had left.
Yeah, and then the rematch against Minnesota in 2019, you got Pete playing with one hand. So it's just that offensive line was a sieve right there too. So, yeah. That will, and he's more mobile, but it's just going to be tough. They will send guys, they will blitz him. That was Tampa's game plan, to blitz the shit out of Winston, blitz him into making those mistakes, and they went after him for that. So, but that's pretty much all I got for a show tonight. I mean, is there anything else that happened in the news that you wanted to talk about? It's really quiet right now. I figure, a couple of things I want us to look at maybe in the next couple of weeks. I do want to talk about Tampa, and I want to talk about Atlanta and what they've done this offseason, and where do we think, what's going to happen with those two teams. I guess the final thing is, think about this for next week, and you might have to remind me that this is going to be the show topic, but give you guys some cannon to fodder to think about. What if you're going to put together an all-time Saints team, just of your favorite players, not the best players at the position? That's a different topic entirely. Just your favorite players. What kind of team would you put together?
That's a good one.
Yeah, because everyone puts together, all-time great teams. I mean, okay, so we're going to have Drew Brees at quarterback. That's a given. But when he gets to the running backs, who are you going to put down as your running back? Who are you going to put down as your 4 receivers? Who are you going to put down as, and how many people really think, I just really love this offensive guard. What guards would you put in and stuff like that? So,
well, I mean, all 3 of us would have Kyle Turley on our all-time favorite.
Yeah.
But I see what you're getting at. But yeah, that'll be an interesting one.
Yeah. So, and it's probably going to be based a lot on who you got to watch as a youth. I'll probably have some old names in there. Guys that I really like Conrad Dobler. On the 79 team, Emmanuel Sanders is another guard I like a lot. I'm not saying he's going to be on the team, but he's one I liked. Derlin Moore, Tommy Myers. So I'm throwing out some old names out there. But
Stonebreaker.
Steve Stonebreaker, I told this story before. That's how the Touchdown Club was formed, based off of his infamous fight.
Yep.
Was it Yale Stadium they were playing at the time? I don't think they were at Yankee Stadium yet. I think they were playing at Yale Stadium in the 60s.
I think you're right, Alan. It's in one of Duncan's books, his first or second one. I'd have to look it up.
Yeah, I'm almost positive it's Yale Stadium. But yeah, it's fun. Here we go. Calvin's already throwing this out. Emmanuel Butler would be my number 1 receiver. I tell you what, if I put together a team based off of Saints fan hype, Emmanuel Butler and Andy Tanner, Anime Ojo, and probably
Adrian Arrington.
I was thinking either Adrian Arrington or what the hell was his name? Oh, God, I just had him for not Hayes, Mercury Hayes. It was somebody, Mike Haas.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Mike Haas, the one draft pick who didn't make it in the 2000 draft class or 2006 draft class. That was like the number 1 hype guy for Saints fans. It was unbelievable. I mean, Chase Lyman was another guy who had the ACL from a cadaver in his leg, and he was supposed to be this speed burner, and he blew out his knee. So yeah. Oh, I could do all hype team too. I could do that one pretty damn easy because I just had to sit there and think about, even before social media, people calling in the Buddy D, all-time hype team. But yeah, your favorite player is making up a team. So y'all write that down. Have your little list ready. And Sean, this is your homework. Come up with a list. Pull out your Saints books, go look up some names, and you'll get it. Stanley Jean-Baptiste. Yeah, that's your number 1 corner. Oh man, it's fun. Tassucky Jones. That was another guy everybody thought was going to be good. Anyway, that's all I got. Unless you guys got anything else.
No, I think we ended on a high note. Yeah, we didn't. The train didn't wreck off the tracks. A couple small detours. That's it.
I jumped on that. I jumped on the crazy train first thing out the box, talking about Zach Wilson and Stacy's mom.
Yeah,
just go from there. But yeah, that I just because NFL memes, I'm so thankful because I'm so tired of reading about Brittany Griner and stuff like that. But they're now having fun with it. They had Time Magazine's Person of the Year, Zach Wilson, that kind of shit. I mean, like I said, it's fun now. It's fun to read that stuff because
it not be about the Saints.
Yeah,
right. And then of course the man who framed Becky Griner, Roger Goodell.
Oh yeah, that's right. He's the one that put that was his
sheesh oil
cartridge for the vape pen. That was his cartridge. We all know that. Oh man, Roger Goodell.
The real Heisenberg.
Yeah. Oh God. Here we go. Now you got people Googling who the hell is Heisenberg? He was the third Rosenberg who was
Yeah.
selling secrets to the Soviets. Yeah. Uh, Dwight Smith, Danny Clark. Oh, we could just go through all the Hazlitt. C. Grant was another one. All the Hazlitt linebackers. Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I mean, good God, the hype machines are just unbelievable. And meanwhile, the guys that have no hype at all, like Joe Horn, nobody knew anything about Joe Horn, and here's Joe Horn, he explodes on
Yep.
the team. So that's what was always fun to me. Oh man, we're naming some names. Jerome Mayberry. Then we'll put together an all-time bus team too. We could do that one time. I think we have that right before. We could do that right before training camp. That's what, 2 weeks, right?
Yeah. Rookies report next week. Veterans report the week after.
Okay. All right. I am going to beautiful downtown Panama City, the 28th and 29th, as well as I'll be back on the 1st. But so I think training camp, I think the first padded practice is like the 30th or 31st.
30th, I believe you're right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I will be at Crab Island in Destin on the 30th. So I will not be watching any Saints news. I will not be on Twitter. I will not, I feel like a Dr. Seuss character. I will not do that, Sam. I am. I will be in the beach. My ass will be have a drink in hand. So anyway, yeah, we'll Joe Horn went in the CFL. Joe Horn was a Kansas
He was with Kansas City. He might have been in the CFL before the Chiefs. I don't know. I'd have to look that up. But he definitely came to New Orleans from Kansas City.
Yeah. I think you might be thinking of Michael Lewis or John Forcade. John Forcade played in the CFL. Yeah. But yeah, Michael Lewis is somebody else who played in I think every league there was before he came to the Saints too. Indoor football league, everything. So anyway, thank you guys for joining us. As always, Bob is about checked out. I know Sean has got a migraine from hell, and I've been keeping him on this show over time. So thank you guys for joining us, and we'll see you next time under the dome. Good night, everybody.
Night.